Somebody's murdered. The driver, Bankikaya, was murdered outside my office in Cape Town. No one is arrested. Ramaphosa, Chele, and Fikile, they were all warned. We wrote letters. I went public. I've made maybe 60 appearances on television, newspapers, radio, talking about this issue. They knew it was coming down the pipeline, and yet they did nothing. They didn't say anything. They didn't condemn the violence. In fact, they supported it by fighting me, bringing the court cases and say, well, not their problem. How can it not be their problem?
What powerful links do you believe they have that gives them this kind of protection?
I believe the police, the traffic department, government are all in cahoots. They are a golden thread that they are not to be touched, hands off. Because we waited about 45 minutes for the ambulance. How can you wait 45 minutes in a city for an ambulance? And the police are standing there. We can't touch him. We can't help him. We can't do anything. They prevented us from helping him.
Yeah, guys, so this story is really interesting for me, especially from a historical perspective. I'm really interested in the history of the South African region. And, this business, Intercape, actually, I started researching on the story about how it came up with this Johan Ferreira. And I think it's really interesting because Ferreira is a name I've seen in many of my studies that actually attributes to a Brazilian heritage. But somehow we see Ferreira actually being a CEO of this company called Intercape. And his father, what many of the research found is Johan Ferreira, the senior, actually was a teacher in Namibia and actually was teaching for 15 years in Namibia before deciding to set up like this passenger bus company. And now Johan Ferreira, the junior, the one in this video, actually then bought 100% of the shares and now has really developed this company, Intercape, to a really full-fledged road transport service for passengers throughout Southern Africa, okay? And, these are kind of like the kind of developments we really hope to keep on hearing in South Africa. Positive, development, individuals who really want to see the growth of the region, expand and all that. But then comes what Johan now speaks about, the taxi mafia. And so he's really, in this video, really passionate about it, but also really angry with the silence of the government. I think he had a lot of the incidents he had during the time of Bekitele, and also, we know Fikile Mbalula and President Ramaphosa are still in power. But he speaks about the silence of the government and how, the perpetuation of the crimes by this taxi mafia have gone on affecting his business, but not necessarily the business per se, but the lives that this incidents by this mafia take in South Africa. And he's really trying to take the fight now in the GNU under the leadership of Ian Cameron, who's the head of the, in the portfolio committee on police in the parliament, to really try to pursue the cases. I think he argues there are 194 cases of these incidents of taxi mafia murdering people, and no one is speaking about it. The government is silent, everyone is silent about it, and he really thinks that this is his own mission to really carry. I think it's a really worthwhile personality to listen to, and how he has been fighting the taxi mafia all by himself alone as a CEO of Intercape, from his own perspective anyway. But I think there was also another really interesting story I thought we'll just begin with, and it's in Mpumalanga residents actually arguing that it appears that the taxi operators, or what is called Sentaco, seem to have declared war on the residents in Mpumalanga, where it appears that if you are an individual resident in Mpumalanga and you wish to give a ride to like a colleague or someone going to the office maybe in the morning, and you pick that person along the road, you might actually get into trouble for doing that. And this sounds it's really scary. Let's listen to this really powerful interview between Soli and the spokesperson for Sentaco, and I'll be back for Johan Ferreira's analysis on his debate and his troubles in fighting the taxi mafia that actually really threatening his business as the CEO of Intercape.
Do you hear him when he says that people in Mpumalanga have no right to ferry a passenger in their car, otherwise they're going to have to explain themselves to security that belongs to the taxi industry there? Is that allowed?
Well, for starters, Xoli, The sentiment that Chairman Sibanyoni is sharing is exactly the sentiment that is understood on a national basis. So we're literally going to tell you the same thing. When you speak about urgency that South Africans are supposedly exercising when they load people into their private vehicles, there's a very thin line that we seem to be missing with you colleagues in the fourth estate. And that's the thin line of the aspect of the reality that we know, which is a reality that we are in a country that's got a high number of violence. The taxi industry, just as with any other operator in the transport sector, is permitted to transport people on a daily basis. When you start saying to us, people must be allowed to be loaded into private vehicles, you're essentially saying that people should now expose themselves to the danger that comes with getting into a vehicle that's not permitted to be transporting private citizens.
Hold on, Ms.
thereby
Pala.
running
Hold
the
on, Ms.
risk.
Pala. Hold on, Ms. Pala. In South Africa, we have the South African Police Service. They are the people who are empowered by law to do exactly what you purport the taxi industry security is doing. But we'll get to that in a moment. If I have a relative and we're both going to work and they are in my car, do you have a right as Santaco to stop me and say, who is this person seated next to you? That is the bone of contention here. Is that what essentially you're saying Santaco is permitted to do?
The use of the word permitted is rather unfortunate for this. I think we need to also be careful, right, in the phrasing of the question so that we don't distort what we're saying. We are saying that there is a reality of criminality in this country. There's also a reality of people who want to take business from those who are permitted to transport South Africans, because most of the people that get to load private citizens into their private vehicles are generating money from that. That is wrong. They cannot do that when there are people in the business.
How do you know that,
who
ma'am?
have been permitted to do that.
How do you know
Yeah,
that?
so that's it. It's really, really crazy. And I think I listened to Radio 702 with Clement Maniatella. He was really angry with this, that, the whole people, residents in Mpumalanga really don't feel freedom anymore. And, they seem to be under some kind of like a war kind of situation where they are not able to move because of the taxi group. So I think this is a really interesting point now to transition into the taxi mafia, and how Johan Ferreira has been fighting the taxi mafia all by himself, like from the perspective of a CEO of this Intercape company that tries to really transport passengers from South Africa, and how the whole taxi industry would really need to a major overhaul. I know that the DA is trying to really take the bull by the horn now. I'll be making a series of videos with Ian Cameron and Dean McPherson, fighting from the perspective of police and also from the construction industry, to really see if they can try to reduce this whole problem with mafia and try to really help South Africa become a burgeoning business environment once more. Let's listen to Johan Ferreira discuss his challenges with the taxi mafia in running a business, transportation business in South Africa. And I'll be back for some really final analysis and thoughts on the Mpumalanga incident.
Johan, please take us back a few years when taxi operators first started demanding that you increase your prices or pay them a so-called levy. How did you react to their threats or their blackmail?
Look, it happened, it all started about 2016 when the taxi operators started to question the validity of our bus permits on specific routes, questioning timetables, questioning prices, questioning everything. And there was meetings with the local authorities, with the PRI, which is the provincial regulatory entities that are responsible for issuing the permits. Nothing could be found wrong with our permits. Okay, we continued with our services. When the taxis saw they couldn't stop us in a legal way, they went underground and they started to attack the buses. They started to victimize the drivers, victimize the passengers. They started to throw buses with stones. They prevent passengers from boarding, from disembarking the coaches. Eventually, it then started to escalate in shooting incidences and literally assaulting the drivers, assaulting passengers, stopping buses at the bus stations in the Eastern Cape, and pulling passengers from the buses itself with guns. And, it just escalated where eventually a driver was murdered, many passengers were injured, drivers were injured, passengers were traumatized, our staff was traumatized, and the police made no effort to arrest anyone. Not today, 194 cases, not one arrest.
So that forced you to turn to the courts to try and get the authorities to act. Now you've won, how many cases already?
Well, we've won 5 cases. The latest one with an appeal that the Minister of Transport in the Eastern Cape, the MEC, lost. We're now awaiting the trial of the appeal that the Minister of Police brought of adjustment against him. So we agreed to the leave to appeal from a strategic point of view, because we believe that a judgment in our favor will be stronger in a appellant court than just, losing an appeal. So this will be again a landmark case for South Africa, where we have taken the Minister of Police, the Hawks, the investigative directorate, and we have said to them, you have to investigate and you have to make arrests. You cannot let 194 cases just disappear and be scrapped, like many, many cases are scrapped in South Africa. That leads to a dead end, according to the police.
But how do you feel about them legally fighting not to do what constitutionally they should do?
No, look, as a business person, I've taken a decision, whether I have to or could invest more in the country. And I had to do a stress test on the system. And the stress test for me was to see if the judiciary system holds up, then there are hope. And it has come through in a big way. It has delivered. It has made sound judgments by different judges, judging on this more or less the same issue. So clearly we are in the right, and we are supported by the Supreme Court. We are also will be, and I can promise you that we will be vindicated in the appellant court as well. So then we'll have 6 judgments against government, where they have constantly failed to uphold the Constitution, their fiduciary responsibility in terms of the office that they hold, in other words, the position as a minister or an MEC, and they have gone further and to use public funding to fight a private person conducting a business in South Africa, to ask for legal assistance and for justice. Somebody is murdered. A driver, Bankikaya, was murdered outside my office in Cape Town. No one is arrested. That's not justice. Ramaphosa, Chele, and Fikile, they were all warned. We wrote letters. I went public. I've made maybe 60 appearances on television, newspapers, radio, talking about this issue. They knew it was coming down the pipeline. And yet, they did nothing. They didn't say anything. They didn't condemn the violence. In fact, they supported it by fighting me, bringing the court cases and say, well, not their problem. How can it not be their problem? If they are responsible and paid to, for law and order in this country.
Johan, by now you must know. Sorry, Johan. By now you must know a lot about the taxi mafia. What powerful links do you believe they have that gives them this kind of protection?
Listen, it's the proverbial, tail that wags the dog. It's just follow the money. Just follow the money. Why are there no arrests? I believe the police, the traffic department, government are all in cahoots. They are a golden thread that they are not to be touched, hands off. And I believe it's money. It's all about the money. It's all about the money.
Well, you have refused to pay them a levy. When last did you hear from them? Are you still getting threats? What are the most recent incidents?
I think we have touched on the right nerve when we took the police to court, and the Minister of Police and the MEC and the MEC of Transport. We didn't take the taxis because they are like a man of straw. You don't get a real address, you don't get a real name, you don't get a real Nothing is real. Okay, everything is underground and undercover. So we have gone after the police, and we have put tremendous pressure on the police. So far, insofar as we have established and taken the commissioner, the National Commissioner of Police, to task, where we've taken him to court, and we said you are in contempt of court, and the court found him in contempt of court. Both the local Eastern Cape Commissioner of Police and the national, Commissioner of Police were found in contempt. And only then, they started to write 2-3 lame letters, had 2-3 lame, meetings, just, to try and put up a smoke screen and say, well, we are doing something. You can't really put us in jail. We've done something. We've not done it, but we've done something. And this is how they get away literally with murder, because nobody's arrested. 194 cases. That's unforgivable. That's unforgivable.
Johan, what has this cost your company in financial terms?
No, hundreds and millions of rands. But, it's not about the money. It's about the lives. The lives being threatened, people being traumatized. Bankie Kaya that lost his life. His late wife came and she literally washed his blood from the pavement and from the cement outside in our yard, the bus yard. I saw him a few minutes before he passed away. And, even that shouldn't have happened, because we waited about 45 minutes for the ambulance. How can you wait 45 minutes in a city for an ambulance? And the police are standing there. We can't touch him. We can't help him. We can't do anything. They prevented us from helping him. There's so many things in South Africa that's just so wrong. That is just so wrong. And there's this man, lost his life. He came to do an honest man's work, and he was shot in broad daylight outside my office here in the street.
Yeah, brilliant set of interviews, guys. So I'll just quickly go into a report I found on Times Live, where it says that, the public are actually frustrated by the patrollers, okay? They say we can't be held hostage by taxi drivers. So this is actually a report, I think, from many areas in South Africa. It says that many fear driving with their families as they could be stopped to explain why they have passengers. This is really bizarre. I mean, like, this sounds like a communist space, so to speak, where freedom in a way isn't really guaranteed, you see. So it says that motorists have actually expressed their frustration over taxi patrollers allegedly terrorizing them for giving hitchhiking lifts. A recent video showed a taxi patrol car allegedly blocking a vehicle on the highway after the driver picked up passengers, and the behavior allegedly happens across the country. It says that Meter Taxi allegedly block e-hailing drivers from picking up passengers at Gauteng stations in Johannesburg and Pretoria, and they also allegedly question private motorists who pick up their families and friends. This is a really interesting problem. It says many motorists are living in fear of driving their cars freely with their families, as they could be stopped by taxi patrollers to explain why they have passengers and how they are related to them. Some have allegedly had their cars seized and have been forced to pay hefty fees for their return. The National Police Commissioner General Fanny Masemola has actually condemned the behavior, saying taxi patrollers have no right to stop motorists from giving people lifts. So now here says that, social media users have actually spoken out, calling also for police action and arrest of taxi patrollers involved in harassing motorists, okay? There was also Fanyana Sibanyoni, who was one of the guys, I think he's the South African National Taxi Council chairperson, that's Santako. He says that he believes that car owners are not permitted to give hitchhikers lifts unless they explain their relationship to taxi patrollers. Wow, that's really interesting. So it says that Fanyana's view actually sparked anger from the public. And this other social media user, Luca Rintega, said, "We can't be held hostage by taxi drivers and associations. Their behavior is like declaring war on everyone. Imagine begging them to allow our wives and children to get inside our cars. Did we sign contracts which bind us to the use of their taxis? They are getting far too They're getting too far with their attitude, and I can't beg them to be with my family inside my car. Another user warned this should stop before someone is killed. It says this must stop before someone draws a firearm and kills another person, or there will be a huge accident where innocent lives will be lost. The taxi industry thugs have no right to dictate who gets to ride in my car. They should improve their product so that people will find it preferable to use them. Forcing someone to do anything is against the law unless you are legally operating law enforcement official, said this user, Sibia. So finally, it says that some believe that taxi patrollers feel entitled to public roads because the police are not doing anything about the situation. And we hope that Sezum Kunu would, step into this situation and actually do something about it, because it's actually a case of bullying, you see. It says that citizens are bullied because there's a huge lack of visibility and active public policing. What are the police doing to show up better in the streets? Anyone does as they please and takes charge of our streets. And in the meantime, the men in blue are locked in community policing service centers and not doing street policing. The system that allows these guys to take space starts with the security sector step back stance and exposing citizens to these kinds of problems. Then there was this other guy who, Nkwashu, he actually suggested that the taxi industry should be regulated by the government. And I think this is why Johan Ferreira is actually angry with Ramaphosa and Mbalula, because it appears that the government is silent on this area of South Africa's transport infrastructure. So here he says that it is high time for our government to take control of taxi industries. I think Sibanyoni is a good example of this arrogance. He should focus on the safety of people who give him money, and that the Good Party joined the debate, saying action should be taken against the taxi industry for unlawful behavior. Saying that Santaco is a national taxi institution and its members' errant behavior in Mpumalanga must be swiftly stopped before it spreads to other provinces. So this is really interesting for me coming from Nigeria, because, we also have taxis in Nigeria. We call them Kabu Kabu. I think also I used taxi in Kenya, also in Nairobi, called Motatus, and in Ghana as well. Ghana, the taxis are usually called the Trotro or the buses. But I know they have strong unions. These public transport institutions really have really strong unions, but this one in Mpumalanga is actually a little bit wilder than I've experienced, because it appears that if I had to probably drive my own car in these regions and I see a friend or a colleague or an acquaintance, I really have to take permission to give that person a ride on the roads in South Africa. I think that's a little bit problematic if I could think about it closely. But I don't know, what do you guys think? What do you think about Johan Ferreira's speech here and also the analysis of the Mpumalanga taxi drivers? Share your thoughts in the comments.